And so as we were treating her for the trauma treatment and going through it, she was crying. She looked very, very sad. She looked very sad before we started, and she started crying even more. And then as we started going through the treatment, her tears stopped and she started smiling. And so I asked her, "What's coming up for you?" She said, "I can remember my father playing with me for the first time." I said, "That's really good. You're starting to access the fond memories. It's starting to process through." And so then I asked her, "And when you think about what happened in the church now, what's coming up?" And my interpreter started like looking at me like, "What are you doing? She's doing fine now. Why are you bringing that up again? But we need to get a complete treatment." So she's bringing up more memories, and so we keep working it through. And as we're working it through, pretty soon she starts laughing. And I think we're like not 15 minutes into the treatment, she's laughing. And so I asked her, "What's coming up for you now?" She said, "Well, when I was little, my mother didn't want us to have these sweet fruits because they have very good teeth in Rwanda because they don't have any of the junk food we have in the United States." Well, she said that her mother didn't want them to have this very sweet fruit, but her father would kind of hide them in the pockets. And when mom wasn't looking, he would give it to them. And she was remembering that and laughing as she remembered that. And I said, "That's very good. You're processing through. Now, when you think about what happened in the church, what comes up for you?" And she said, she thought, and there were no tears. She didn't look traumatized as she had before. She said, "Now I can still remember it, but it's like a distant memory." She said, "Now it's like 12 years ago." And she started excitedly telling more of the fond memories that she had. And she started telling more and more and more. So we said, "Okay, that's really good, and we'll see you tomorrow." The next day when we saw her, we thought we'd work through, there were more stuff. She said for the first time she had no nightmares and she slept through the night. And she started telling us more of these fond memories that she had from childhood that she had not been able to access for 12 years. And to show you the level of appreciation, this is a different boy playing marbles, but there was a young man who had been having, we treated him for trauma from the genocide, and then he said that he has a fear of the dark, and because they have no electricity, they have to actually, it's dark as soon as the sun goes down. So he says, well, he sits on his bed, which they share with, like bunk beds that they share with 4 other kids. He said, I sit on the bed and I shake until the other kids come to bed because they're playing in the dark, and he can't play in the dark, he's too afraid. So we treated him for his fear of the dark. And the next day when we came, he almost ran into the bus we came on because he was so excited. He's running up to the bus, and he said, I was able to stay up and play. I wasn't afraid of the dark at all. And when we were leaving Rwanda, it was a very emotional thing. He came up and he's trying to open my hand. So I thought he was trying to shake hands. So I'm trying to shake his hand, and he keeps trying to open my hand. And I noticed he had, in his fist, he had 3 marbles. His few possessions were his little blanket for his bunk bed, and he had his 2 sets of clothes, and he had these 3 marbles, these 3 little cracked marbles. And he was trying to give me one of his marbles as a token of appreciation for the help in what he said is giving me my life back, because now I can play even in the dark. So it was very touching. By the way, I didn't take the marble. I asked him if I could take a photograph of playing with the marbles so that he could play with it, and then we would be returning in a year later. Now, this is a transformation that we're seeing a year later. When we went to the one-year follow-up, we went at actually an even worse time. We went at the anniversary of the genocide the first time, but we didn't know the whole ramifications of it until we were there the first time. In the beginning of this, genocide anniversary, they have a period of a few days where there is no singing, no dancing, no school, no work, no distractions, because they want people to remember the genocide, to think about it, to remember it, so that it will never happen again. And so the first time we went, we were actually on the cusp of that, so they were actually starting to be able to sing and dance. This time when we went right at the beginning, so it would be at the very worst period, which some people who are more research-oriented said, oh no, you're doing PTSD assessments and you're going to do it at that time, a worse time than when you first started, then that's not a good thing. But we're clinicians, so we said, no, we want to go to be able to help them, because if they have anything coming up, that's what we want to do to help them with that. Well, to our surprise, when we had the assessments done, I was looking at them and I thought, you know, this is strange, because there are not PTSD high indications. And we were puzzled because this is at the worst time and we were expecting that. So we were really kind of puzzled. And that's where we actually, I'll show you later with the video that we have of the students, some of the students and teachers talking, that you can actually see how they were transformed and what they were doing. There were no major symptoms of PTSD in the students that we worked with at the anniversary of the genocide the previous year. There was an increased sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And that led to not only changes in the students' behavior, from their aggressive behavior, withdrawal, depression, and the PTSD symptoms, but also in their environment. According to the teachers, because this place was so much cleaner when we went, they said that the students actually cleaned it up after we had treated them and we left. They said they were so inspired. They were very industrious. They had more energy because they were not dealing with traumatic flashbacks and daymares and nightmares. They were better able to concentrate. So they cleaned the floors. They asked to do some planting, so they had planted things, so the environment was greener, and I'll share more about their vegetable gardens that they grew. There was increased concentration, so their grades were better, and they were learning. And a considerable number of them passed the competitive exams in Rwanda and were able to move on to the regular secondary schools. These are some of the children outside this is the area where they're having their meals prepared in on firewood in pots. That's them with their meal. And in addition to their beans and rice, which is their staple fare, now they are having the vegetables that they have grown. They planted these after, and they were very industrious in planting. Wait till you see what the vegetables look like.
Oh, wow.
That's the lettuce over there. I couldn't believe it. And because they have the vegetables they're growing are so abundant, they're not only being able to feed themselves, they're using that for the 2 meals, and then they're also being able to, the surplus, they're being able to market to have additional